Real quickly, Lazear Capital, we're based out of Columbus, Ohio. I'm based out of Phoenix. We have other representatives, someone in Dallas. Doug Janowski is my counterpart in Dallas. We have folks in the Midwest and then in the deserts of California as well, too. And I'll go into why I think ESOPs are really great, especially in California, given the capital gains taxes that are there, in addition to the federal capital gains taxes. We're a little bit unique in that we offer both M&A and ESOP services. We started as an M&A shop. What's been interesting is that we can run a deal concurrent, an M&A deal and an ESOP deal. 95% of the time, business owners have chosen the ESOP option versus an M&A transaction for various reasons that we'll go through. Our focus is really on the middle market companies, but we should update this. We've done as large as $2 billion in valuation size, so 25 million up to 2 billion. What makes us really unique is just the execution team we have in Columbus. It's made up of a bunch of attorneys, tax accountants, CFAs. I'm a commercial banker. None of us are practicing right now, but we bring those expertise to the table. And we've got a lot of industry verticals as well too, which we'll discuss. So I don't want this to be a Lazear commercial, but that's a little bit about us. So real briefly, I just want to start on what an ESOP is. It's an ownership transition tool. And right now of the transactions that are being done, 100%, if you take the universe of transactions, 97% are M&A. We're still at 3% being ESOPs. And that's for a variety of reasons. But we really think there's a lot of opportunity as we sent out that Mark sent out in the teaser. In the next 5 to 10 years, 75% of business owners expect to sell their company. And I think so you've got this silver tsunami, they're calling it, but I think there's also been a cultural shift. So I don't know if you have clients whose children aren't really interested in running mom or dad's roofing company or plumbing company. So I think there's been a cultural shift on top of that as well. And so there's going to be a lot of transition in the next 5 to 7 years, and we're hoping that a lot of business owners consider an ESOP. It's very tax efficient, and then it provides employees with a retirement plan that they wouldn't otherwise have. The latest statistic I saw was that baby boomers have about 62,000 on average in 401k savings. So that is not going to be sufficient to be able to retire on. A lot of people are relying on Social Security, which I think in 2033 is expected to go broke. So there's an issue there if you're solely relying on Social Security. So this has become an issue at the federal level, and that's why they support ESOPs. And that's why they give some tax incentives, which we'll go into on the presentation. Yeah, if you look at the broader population, I think it's closer to 30,000 on average in 401k savings. It's going to be a big, potentially a big issue. All right. So I know this isn't an ESOP fable, but there's a feeling that ESOPs are only for contractors, and contractors are actually a great. That's our largest industry. The primary reason being is that if you are to sell, especially a general contractor, if you were to sell in the open market, you might be getting a 4 to 5 times multiple, depending on your size, longevity, types of contracts. Well, we're able to get a 5 to 6 times multiple as an ESOP. And the primary reason being is that you think about general contractors, you may have one founder owner that has all of the relationships. Well, an ESOP keeps them engaged, and we think that there's value there. But we do all types of different industries. Manufacturers work really well. I don't know if anyone followed the news, but BDO just became an ESOP, the consulting agency. We've got architects, engineers, healthcare, any groups that also have a lot of real estate involved. You actually have the ability to sell that real estate and avoid depreciation recapture into the ESOP. So senior care facilities, assisted living are all. So essentially any industries that don't work well are actually high-tech industries, because you're typically going to be getting a strategic buyer and they might be paying 10 times plus multiples. And we can't, on the ESOP side, you can't get that type of multiple. Anything else is fair game though, and we've seen it all. I'll pause there. I think there was a comment in the chat, so I want to be sure I'm not. Okay, it was just an introduction from Krishnan. Okay, excellent.
Well, but
right.
Abran, if you would,
Yeah,
at
John.
the when you talk about the valuation, the market valuation to set the value for the company, if you would just cover what all gets taken into account there. Do they take in, existing multiples? Do they, presumably they don't take in any public comps and discount them? Anyway, just for later.
And it's not our firm, but it's a trustee that hires a valuation firm. But we know we're usually within the range of what the value is going to be. But yeah, they do take public comps into account. We do a discounted cash flow on, probably 1 to 2 years of projections and 3 or 4 years back. So just depending on the industry, if the projections are really strong, meaning their contracts in place and they're very predictable, we'll put a higher, less of a discount factor on those projections. So it's more of an art than a science. What we do is we'll put together a feasibility analysis up front, and we've never been wrong in terms of our number, but we do tend to be a little bit conservative. But yeah, they use all of the above: public comps, discounted cash flow. We subscribe to the Capital IQ and their private comps as well. And we haven't, interestingly enough, on the ESOP side, we have not seen a degradation of multiples that you've seen recently on the private equity side. So we're still able to get a really good value for folks, primarily because we're not loading it up maybe with a lot of bank debt. There is some healthy amount of bank debt, but we're getting some pretty healthy margins. And we've never been busier. And I think part of that is that some private equity groups are either pulling out of transactions, or they're pushing more of the earnout. The price is going into an earnout, and so their business owners are having to stay more involved than they'd like. All right, that's not a picture of me, but there's another myth I think is, there's nothing in it for the advisor when an ESOP is done. But that really is, it really is the opposite. I don't know if anyone's been part of, John, you mentioned you were part of a couple of companies that either went public or sold. If that company sells, typically as an advisor, you're out of a job at that point. Hopefully have a good parachute and have done well, but accountants, attorneys, banks, they all lose the client when they get sold to private equity a lot of times. Or if it's a roll-up, the first to go are the CFOs and the C-level folks, because either the roll-up already has those positions, or the private equity group brings that in-house. So it's a great way to retain your client. You probably bill some additional hours for the work you're doing during the ESOP, and then retain your client. I think it's great with prospective companies. So if you're talking to some prospects, not everyone's talking about an ESOP. So I think it's a really unique angle to be able to approach some of these businesses. And then there's opportunity to relever the company to pay off the seller loan. So as for banks, or if you're consulting on the debt side, it can be a nice annuity. And then the other huge benefit is that you've got a tax-free company paying back debt. And so you've just supercharged the cash flow. And hopefully if you're paying off the debt and then reserving some cash for future retirees, it actually is a good deal. And then again, like I mentioned, 70 to 75% of your clients are going to be selling in the next 10 years. So it's good to get out in front of it and be a consultant on this versus being reactionary to the market. Yeah, and then a lot of folks think that ESOPs are a transaction of last resort, and that it is not necessarily a good deal for the hardworking owner, or they might not get as much as they would in the public markets or selling to a third party. And that's just not the case. I'm going to go through a few of the tax benefits that owners receive when they sell the company. And they're pretty substantial. The big one is tax-free sale by electing 1042. So I don't know if folks in the real estate side have dealt with 1031 exchanges in the past, but similar concept, except we have at Lazear have a product where you can actually get out of the 1042 within a year. And that's really a big deal in California, where again, there's a 12 to 13% capital gains tax. That's on top of the 20% federal tax. And then there's also a 2 to 3% Medicare tax. So you think about that in California, if you sell your business, for every dollar that you sell it for, 30 to 33%, 35% is actually going in taxes. So if you're able to retain those 35, that 35 cents for every dollar that you sell, it's it can be it can be pretty substantial. And I think a lot of owners, when they look at their sale number, they think, well, that's what I'm going to net, and that isn't obviously the case after taxes. If there's an earnout, there could be some sting taxes as well. So this allows them to keep 100% of their sale price. So I just want to pause there because this is a huge reason that from a tax perspective, it's very efficient to sell as an ESOP. Arizona, we've got a 2.5 to 3% capital gain, so it's not as as tax efficient, but you still have your 20% federal and your Medicare of 2 to 5%. Depending on what your payroll is. All right. So, and then the other benefit is the post ESOP company, if they sell as an S corp, becomes 100% tax free. So the way the transaction works is you don't change your operating entity, you change the owner, and the owner in this case is an ESOP trust, which acts like a 401k. That ESOP trust, though, just happens to own your company stock versus IBM or Apple or Google stock. And so it is a non-taxable entity. So the company pays no taxes. Then there's some tax write-offs for the owner. They can go back a year and do an ESOP contribution, which is a non-cash contribution, which gives them a pretty large deduction. And then warrants as an estate planning vehicle. I'll talk about how these transactions are financed, but a large part of it is an owner carryback. And they can elect to take warrants versus interest on this carryback note, which gives them the ability to, these warrants are valued at zero the day that the ESOP closes. And they're actually able to transfer out these warrants either to their children, get it out of their estate. I think the estate tax, the minimum goes down in 2026. So this is a way to transfer to your heirs. Some people have done put them into Roth IRAs, and it can actually grow tax-free. And this gives the owners another estate planning vehicle. And on top of that, warrants are taxed at capital gains versus interest paid is taxed at ordinary income. That's another benefit there. So lots of good things for the owner. And again, this is just a visual that an ESOP can either go the non-taxable route or the taxable ESOP sale. So that's really up to the owner as well too. And here's just a visual of, if a company had to sell, they would have to sell at, we can sell at a 75% discount to the third market, an outside buyer, for them to get the same proceeds. That equates to, so let's say you're selling at 6 times as an ESOP, you'd have to sell at 9 to 10 times as a non-ESOP to get the same after cash value. And these companies just aren't getting that in third-party offers. So you're actually getting a lot more cash after tax cash with an ESOP. And this assumes a 5% state and local capital gains tax. Again, California is 12 to 13%. So it's even more stark in California. I think New York and New Jersey are pretty high as well too. I should know what their capital gains tax is, but it's not. It's higher than Arizona for sure. John, do you know what I think in New Jersey is like 10 or 11? It's higher than Arizona.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, you've obviously had to my knowledge, you've had investors leaving both New York and New Jersey simply for the taxes.
Yeah, a lot of them domiciling down in Florida. We're seeing the same in
Yeah.
California, being domiciled in Nevada or Arizona for those capital gains reasons. But you're still not escaping the federal, which is 20%. So again, a visual and a taxable transaction, the company would have to sell for 33% more in order to provide the same after-tax cash to your shareholders.
Abran, just a quick question for you. The section 142 or 1042, excuse me, is that what's involved in implementing that? What's the requirements there?
So there are a couple paths. I don't want to get way in the weeds with that.
Right, without getting too technical here.
Yeah, we've got a proprietary product where we can use existing real estate or other assets that the owner might have, and they're able to LLC, and we can get them out of the liability within a year. There are other products out there that you essentially buy 10% of your capital gain. So let's use a $10 million number. They're buying $1 million in floating rate notes and then leveraging those up to 100% of your liability. The problem there is you have to keep those in place for the life for your life, and they don't pay very much. So we've got some solutions and things around it.
Okay.
But upon sale, doesn't the seller, as long as they put it into comparable securities, doesn't that investment alone just defer the tax?
It defers it till you die, and then your heirs get a step up. So it's kind of like an insurance.
Right.
Heirs and the federal.
Right.
But our product can, again, we can be out of the liability within a year, and then you're able to do whatever you want with that money.
Oh, I see. Right.
Okay.
That's right. I remember now. Otherwise they had to stay in those types of investments until you pass.
Yep. Yeah, which each then you also have to pay loan fees, and there's a loan involved as well too. So we think our product is a lot more efficient. And we don't think taxes are going down. Maybe they are. But so yeah, as taxes go up, that even becomes more of a more compelling. A lot of owners think once they become an ESOP, there's no second bite at the apple. So I talked about these warrants. We just closed a transaction. The company value was, well, I'm sorry, there was a question. I mean to speak over. Okay, maybe not. So the way for the owner to get a second bite of the apple is through these warrants. And they can decide, 11, it's actually closer to 14% is common for carryback note interest. And I'm not sure if anyone's seen what the mezz, with bank debts, commercial debt being in the 7-8% range, what mezz debt is charging. But we're trying to match what a mezz lender would be charging the company, and that's 11 to 14%. I don't know if anyone has any other experience on what the latest rates are there. But they can split this between cash interest, which is paid to the owner on an annual basis or quarterly basis, however they set that up, or warrants. So presumably the owner is going to stay on as an owner and a CEO, continue to draw a salary, continue to have benefits. And so they may decide that they want to do more warrants than cash pay interest. And so that was the case in a deal we closed a couple of weeks ago. The company was valued for about 50 million, including the warrants. If they reached the projections that they provided to us with the warrants, it would have put them closer to a 75 to 80 million dollar transaction. So all in with that second bite at the apple, it was pretty lucrative for the owners. And this keeps them incented as well too, if they want to continue to be part of the company. And again, these warrants are taxed at capital gains versus the carry interest, which is ordinary income, so it's tax efficient. And if they wanted to transfer these to their heirs, they could get it out of their estate at a zero value day one.
Now, Abran, is this on the whole thing, or is this structure arise because maybe the transaction size exceeds what the bank is willing to lend?
That's the case in most cases. So like in a 6 times multiple, you might get 2 to 3 times from a bank, probably closer to 2 in this environment. And then the owner carries back the 4 times.
But if it's an ESOP, will the senior loan stretch at all, given the tax efficiency of it?
Well, that's the nice thing is those are typically 5-year amortizations, and with a cash flow recapture, they're paid off in two years or so. That's.
But I mean, will they stretch on the multiple?
They might.
Will they stretch?
I'm not. If you know some bank you want to introduce me to, our last transaction, we were able to get 2 times. We had asked for 2.5, but
Okay.
yeah. But
I just didn't know whether the
cash flow. We were at 4 times debt coverage rate. It was really strong, but it was just the credits tightened up, unfortunately.
Right. Well, given that you've got the tax shelter with this, I just didn't know whether the banks had looked at that extra cash flow saying, okay, that strengthens the deal so we can extend our multiple by 1/4 or 1/2 or 3/4 of a turn.
Yeah, we were getting 3 times as recently as 6 to 8 months ago, but the latest deals where we've gone to the bank market, it's been in the 2 times range.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. That's industry wide.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, that's why I'm glad I'm not in banking right now. Was my internal sales job became a lot more difficult than my external. So trying to sell the credit flow on doing good deals was tough. But I can't stress enough what a great tax planning vehicle this is for business owners that are trying to think about how they're going to transfer their wealth. And a lot of folks think that this is a last resort for the worker bees or the folks that are actually working for the company. I love this piece. I got into this. I have an uncle and a brother-in-law who were both working for Dunn Edwards Paint here in Phoenix, and come to find out it is an ESOP, or was an ESOP. They ended up getting bought out by Nippon, and were able to buy a house, send my niece to college. It really was life-changing for them. And so they're great benefits for the owners, but they're even greater benefits, I think, for the employees. The cool thing from a company perspective is you either get a 45% bump year one with the ESOP once it's adopted. The reason being is that you now have employee owners, and so they treat the company like it's their own today. We had one contractor who had like $600,000 of overtime, $600,000 in overtime pre-ESOP, and then 0 overtime post-ESOP. And all of that is just being self-policed by the other employees were really pushing on their colleagues to say, hey, this is our company, don't get to work. A big one for contractors, and maybe that's changing a little bit now, but it's a great way to attract and retain the employees. And they're able to do that at a multiple of 4 times greater than their competition. So a lot of contractors or areas where it's tough to recruit people, this is a really nice recruitment tool. And they're less likely to disappear as non-ESOP firms for any reason. That's a nice benefit. And then the employees, 53% longer medium job tenure, 33% higher income from wages, 5 to 12% higher median wage, and then 2.2 times greater asset in retirement plans. So I don't know if any of you have been involved in M&A transactions. It really is a zero-sum game. If the private equity group or the acquiring company gets something, it's lost by the owner or the seller. In this case, everyone can benefit from the transaction, which is exciting for me. I want to pause here, and I'd love to get Rodney's, if you're still on, just your input on what happened with your particular company that had some issues repaying their obligations.
Sure. I have not NDNA, so I got to figure out how to be very succinct on this. It was a family-owned business that started in the 50s with two brothers, and they were engineers. They were not financial people by any stretch of the imagination. And so they had a gentleman come along who had been an accounting manager. They liked him. He became the CFO. They started the ESOP. So over a 35-year period, they had no valuation done on the ESOP. They sat in a board meeting and they basically decided what the shares were worth. Three guys, two engineers and the county manager. They did no studies, no nothing and that. And they didn't realize that they needed to have some kind of a cash reserve in the event that the ESOP basically gets liquidated. And so when the brothers became about in their mid-80s, one of them died and the other one decided to sell the business. So I was working with a private equity firm and doing IPOs. And just because I lived in Seattle, they wanted to buy the company, so went over there. The brothers had basically taken most of the cash out of the business for, shall we say, toys like boats and luxury homes and stuff like that. So when we had a meeting and we told the employees their ESOP was basically worthless, everybody walked out at that point in time. So the company became totally worthless. And
Cautionary tale.
yeah, and unfortunately I was the messenger, so I got shot. So we figured out something. The PE firm I was working with, we had some pretty heated meetings. So we pretty much were able to give employees about 32 cents on the dollar. So it was so crazy.
That's
and,
a couple things there. One, we don't allow the company to run their own ESOP, so we require a third-party trustee as part of.
Hey, you can come up with every wrong way to do this, and I swear they had new ways, but it was horrible. And a lot of the employees were so mad that they sabotaged a lot of the manufacturing equipment, and some of it was custom made, and it could only be used for specific needs. And to replace it, one piece of equipment alone cost $80 million, and the company was doing about 280 million in revenue. So it was a pretty sad story. So of course I was the messenger, and I'm still pulling the bullets out of my back.
Oh, Rodney, I'm sorry.
But
don't throw the baby out, though. It just sounds like
yeah,
some unfortunate structuring issues there. I mean, you typically we require an annual third-party valuation, and it shouldn't be done internally or by the engineer owners either. So,
well, and then isn't there an independent trustee to ensure that that payment flows are getting where they're supposed to be? I mean, Rodney, in that situation, was it a seller financed ESOP?
No,
there wasn't any bank that was getting repaid?
What they basically did is, on one hand, on an annual basis, they issued what they called ESOP shares to the employees. So as an employee, you got this nice little piece of paper here. He said, okay, I got, because I'm, the CFO, I get 10,000 shares. And if I'm the receptionist, I get 50 shares. And that's the way they did this. And they says, okay, what should we say it's worth? Well, instead of giving cash bonuses, they said that we were going to give you an ESOP bonus. And so that ESOP bonus was a piece of paper that said X number of shares across it. And there were lawsuits for about 3 years. And the private equity firm basically stepped up and settled all of them. So, but when I had KPMG come in to do the due diligence, and my first conversation was, do you have any kind of equity instruments that are held by the employees? Oh yeah, we have this great ESOP plan. Let us tell you all about it. I think I went in the bathroom and cried for about an hour.
Yeah,
So, but it was pretty bad. So, their heart was in the right place.
all the more
They
reason
just
though, you
didn't
need
execute it
to have
right.
an expert, you need to have the right attorneys, you need to have the right investment bank, you need to have the right CPA firm in place, you have to have a trustee, you really have to do this right because there's a lot at stake if you get this wrong.
And it screwed a lot of people. A lot of people just could not retire. They had to go find other places to work. And, they spent 30, 40 years with this company. So it was crazy.
I'm sorry. Well, I think it's a cautionary tale, and make sure to hire a good investment bank like Lazear. Consider an ESOP.
Because the ESOP is a great incentive for employees. It's a great vehicle for the owners for tax reasons. I mean, if it's done right.
Yeah.
So, and I've been involved in a couple others that were done right. And it's really great to see. So.
Well, I appreciate that. It's nice having an expert on the panel, Rodney. We've got about 11 minutes, so I'll try to race through the remaining pages. Couple points here. Third party. I don't know if you've been in a transaction where they have a third party coming in, but you have the management meetings, you have the suits and the private equity groups coming in. It can be pretty disruptive around the water cooler costs, and people can wonder what's happening with the company. If it gets out that you're considering an ESOP, that's not necessarily a bad rumor to have. So your disruption to operations is minimal. At the top, the taxation piece is huge. Third party, you have upfront plus contingencies. And an ESOP, it's upfront and then fixed payments. Predictability. I don't know. I think the statistic is about 60% of M&A deals that are under LOI will get closed. 40% don't. We close 100% of our deals because you have a willing seller and a willing buyer. And then post-close involvement, I think this is a big one. The other statistic, and this is from the Exit Planning Institute, is that 75% of business owners deeply regret selling their business after that. And the primary reason is they just feel disconnected from their family. What was their family, what was their third child, their business, they're no longer connected to, and nothing provides them with food. The owners it's up to them how they are involved on a post-closing basis. We talked a lot about this, but this is essentially how a transaction gets financed. The gray is the seller note. We get as much bank loan as possible, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, depending on the market. And then we always have a line of credit available as well for working capital. You don't want to sell the car without gas. We're making sure that there's cash in the company when this sells with an available line of credit. Another big plus for owners is that no personal guarantees on the bank debt. So they don't have they're not personally guaranteeing it because they don't own the company anymore. And plus they have all this gray note behind the bank. So they shouldn't be required to personally guarantee. This is what a 5-year payback looks like. The blue line is the bank debt. And every 18 months or so, sometimes every year, we're going back to the bank and asking them to re-up or do the 2 times EBITDA to pay down the gray note, which is the owner, because the owner's getting 11 to 14%, the bank's only getting 7 to 8, so it makes more sense to maximize your bank debt. As you can see, it pays off pretty quickly with not having to pay taxes. This is our deal timeline. We're typically it's a 4-month transaction from the day that we sign an engagement, and that really depends on the pace the owner wants to go to as well. And then, yeah, I didn't touch a lot on the employee advantages, but this transaction we just closed, a $60,000 employee in 15 years is actually going to have close to $1 million in their retirement account, based on the projections that they provided. It's pretty incredible. And then it's just good. Yeah, it's great for the owner as well too. They can choose how little or how much they're involved with the company. A lot of times they may stay on as CEO for 2 or 3 years and then just take on a chairman position on the chairperson on the for the board of directors. A couple of parameters I wanted to mention, with the requirements, we usually again are requiring an annual audit or a review at a minimum. And then you've got annual evaluations that you need to do. You need to pay a third-party trustee, third-party administrator. In order for those fixed costs to make sense, it's usually at least a $2 million EBITDA minimum. You need 18 employees because there are ERISA laws, Department of Labor laws, that don't allow more than 20% ownership held in 3 or less people, and that makes it difficult if there's less than 18 employees. And then you can't have, obviously you're selling the business, so the owner could designate an heir to be the CEO, but they can't take, that's still the trustee and the board have to vote on that. And then management available, we can also provide stock appreciation rights to the CFO, to the C-level folks for up to 20% of the company. So there's a way outside of the ESOP to incent C-level employees, and that can be extremely lucrative as well, in addition to that within the ESOP, those benefits. And the big one is the owner needs to believe that the cash flow of the company is going to continue for the next 3 to 5 years, or at least as long enough to repay the seller note. So if if an owner just wants to cash out and move to Florida or California, this isn't the right option. Okay, that's a lot of information. I'm gonna just switch here. Feel free to send me a LinkedIn invite. This is my contact information. The way we work is we don't charge anything up front. We don't charge anything to do a full feasibility analysis. It's all on a success fee basis. The cool thing about an ESOP is that it's the buyer that pays our fee. So it's actually the employees that pay the investment banking fee in this case. So that gets rolled into the seller note. Our fees do. So it's not out of pocket for them. Yeah, it's been great. Again, I've drunk the Kool-Aid. I think it's an incredible exit option, both for the owners and for the buyers, which are the employees. So hopefully that wasn't too boring. I just want to open it up a couple minutes for any questions that you may have.
Abran, is there a minimum that the seller needs to sell in the initial, like, if he wanted to kind of space it out over time? Isn't it like 30%?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's 30% if they want to take advantage of 1042. If they don't care about selling tax-free, they can do any percentage. The only thing I'd caution is I like to use the analogy of a house. So the company is like a house that you sell to your employees with 100% debt on it. If you're selling 100%, if you're only selling 30% of the house, then you're then owning 70% of 70% of the remaining house. So it dilutes your ownership of the remaining amount. But yeah, 30% is a minimum. And then you would only, the other bad thing about doing a partial is that only 30% of your company would then be tax-free as well.
Right. But could you get that all done on a senior basis?
Yes. Yeah, we sure could. Yeah, and a lot of folks like 30 or 50% for various reasons, and we'll do that.
Sure.
And we'll also run an M&A, we'll run the M&A track as well too, so that an owner can see their two options for M&A and a third-party sale and ESOP. I've been surprised. It's not the, I've thought instinctively that owners would love the fact that they're selling tax-free and getting 35% more money. But it's actually been, hey, I really care about what happens to my key employees. Some folks have been with me for 20 years and their livelihood's important to me. So that also resonates. Don't discount the emotional value of an ESOP as well.
Yeah, no, if they care about legacy, an ESOP is a great structure. What are different ways that the employees vest?
So that's
Who
a nice
receive stock?
it matches your 401k. So there's usually a 5 to 6 year vesting period. And that coincides with all of the debt being paid off, which is usually 5 years. And then the company has up to 6 years to pay that employee off if they quit, and then 3 years if they retire. So that you've got to pay it out a little quicker if it's a retirement. But there is some flexibility. But you're gonna want, the trustee's gonna be accruing for all of this too, and the actuaries are gonna tell you how much money you gotta hold. And then you're not releasing 100% of the stock shares day one. It's usually a 30 to 40 year period that so you've got your 5 to 6 year vest, up to 5 to 6 years to pay them out, and then the shares are being released at 1/30th a year. So yeah, it's pretty unique.
So Abran, this is Jean Latu. I sit on the board of an ESOP and went through the second half sale of the company. So the owner sold 50%. The business paid it back over 5 years, or paid the debt off in 5 years. Then he did the second 50% sale. He took a board position, but was no longer the chairman. New chairman listed on outside board members. That's why I got on it. In 5 years hence, right? So that business owner was paid off sooner because of PPP funds and ECR credits and things like that. The business chose to pay off the debt sooner. So that meant the business owner was out of the business sooner. I don't think he's even on the board anymore. And the beauty of this model is, so this is only an $18 million company. The business owner probably took out 5 to 6 million in sales proceeds. But the beauty of it now is that we're operating debt-free. The business is a very seasonal business, so it takes on a line of credit that, it maxes out 3 million every year, but it's paid off within a couple of months. And then there's no tax. So when they look at their competitors in the industry, they don't pay tax. It's amazing. So
they're old too, right? That's kind of a nice marketing tool as well.
Yeah. And the business owner did want to reward his longtime employees, one of whom was his general manager, who's now the president of the company. And it's a real incentive for him and several other people that have been around a while to continue to work together on this business that they own together. The only downside is there are a lot of professional administration fees. So, they have to get an annual review by the auditors every year. They have to, they have a trustee, and they have the, I forget, trustee and valuation. Yeah, both of those. And then they're paying, some fees to the board of directors for each meeting that's held. So all in all, we figured it's about $100K of costs.
Yeah, not enough.
Yeah, but
You're worth more, Gene. Hold out for more.
Has it been have you found the employees to be pretty engaged though?
yes, some. It's a hard sell to the employees who don't have a good understanding that this is like another 401k. They, you know, a lot of their team just lives hand to mouth and paycheck to paycheck, so that they just don't get it. But this year, the first employee retired with, she had accrued benefits. Her benefits had, sorry, losing my words, but she was able, the company cut her a check when she retired from the ESOP plan because she was fully vested. And they had a big party to celebrate that, asked her what she wanted for her going away party, and they made it a celebration to help explain the ESOP and what the benefit is to them as employees. And that was the best seller of the year as far as helping to understand what that ESOP is. When you're ready to retire, there's going to be some money there for you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, way to bring it home, Gene. I don't need to say anything else. So
Okay.
thank you for that.
Sure.
I'm sorry I went over, Mark. Thank you guys for having me. Again, here's my contact information. Happy to connect with any of you, and we don't charge by the hour, or just feel free to reach out for any questions you have.